Hi everyone, I hope you're keeping well. We will be starting in a few minutes. I just thought I'd give people time to join. Leave you with this beginning for the moment. So you can see this wonderful shadow AI version of me there on the left-hand side. You can read about what this presentation is going to be all about, which is about protecting your business from shadow AI. There's a lot of things to cover here. So I'm going to go through things relatively quickly. So yeah, I'll leave it for another maybe 30 seconds or so before we get started, but it's quite a lot to cover. We're going to be talking about what shadow AI is, and going over why it should really matter, and then moving into really a variety of things, but we're going to be focusing on moving from shadow AI to managed AI, and then we're going to be finishing with five steps really that you can take away. I'll talk about this again in a moment when I go into the contents of the questions that we're going to be answering over the course of the presentation. But yeah. Okay, cool. So I think that's long enough. If other people are going to be joining us, then that's great. They can always join in when they get a moment. So, as mentioned, this webinar is all about protecting your business from shadow AI. So the idea is we're wanting to make sure that we are helping businesses to embrace AI without compromising security or compliance. One of the big things that people say is that they want to get involved in AI, or maybe they don't want to get involved in AI and they're just concerned about the security elements of it, and of course the compliance part of that story as well. So we're going to be talking about a variety of things to do with that. But first of all, let's just cover what shadow AI is, because shadow AI is a bit of a loaded term. If those of you remember shadow IT, so it's on a similar kind of wavelength there. So what is shadow AI? In short, it is the use of AI tools without formal approval or governance or oversight. So, for example, if you have staff members who are using AI, maybe without your knowledge, or you've heard that they're using these different AI tools, but you don't necessarily know which tools they're using, this all fits kind of into the remit of what shadow AI is. So, for example, if they're uploading company documents onto something like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, if the teams are using AI note-taking tools during meetings, if developers are using AI coding assistants, so this is kind of vibe coding, it's called, to be able to basically create things within AI. Or maybe your employees are connecting company data to AI tools using their own personal accounts, and not on business accounts, but on kind of their personal accounts. And maybe they're taking something from your business and thinking, oh, I know, I can create something that's going to be really good with this, signing onto their personal account and then doing it that way. That is really, I mean, that's kind of scratching the surface, but that's what we mean when we talk about shadow AI. So even though it has kind of a malicious type kind of sounding name, most shadow AI is not malicious. Really, all it is that people are trying to work more efficiently. They are just trying to be more productive in their roles. Maybe they're trying to kind of alleviate the trickier parts of their roles, which really is the kind of the purpose of AI. It's meant to augment our expertise, not to replace it. So this is all people are trying to do. But in the meantime, it can leave businesses open for a number of different issues, and we will go over those in a moment. So these are the questions that I'm going to answer. These are kind of really kind of FAQs. These are things that we get asked a lot, not necessarily with the term shadow AI, but they could say, people might just be concerned about different employees that are using, for example, ChatGPT or using Claude or what have you, and maybe haven't actually asked permissions for that. There isn't anything formal in place to allow that. So these are the type of questions that we get. So the first one, why should businesses be concerned about shadow AI? Secondly, are employees the problem, or is it the lack of an AI strategy? The third question, how can we identify shadow AI within our organizations? Fourthly, how do we move from shadow AI to managed AI? And lastly, how can Microsoft Copilot help us to embrace AI safely? That's kind of what we're moving towards, and you'll understand why we understand and we promote Copilot, because we believe that that is probably one of the safest options that there is at the moment when it comes to using AI. But we can talk about that a little bit later into the presentation. So to start with then, why should businesses be concerned about shadow AI? So it's important to know that shadow AI is already affecting your business. By closing your mind to this and to your eyes to this, it can be a dangerous thing, because we all have employees. Those employees are all going to be trying to find ways in which to make their job, more palatable, maybe to be more creative in their role, whatever it is. There's lots of different reasons as to why people be using AI, and they're not necessarily going to be telling their bosses or whatever what they're doing. So the typical scenario of this is an employee uploads, it could be client information, could be pricing models, could be commercial proposals, financial data, HR information, anything really, but they'll be uploading that into an AI tool that they found online. So this could be ChatGPT, it could be Claude, it could be Gemini, it could be a whole host of other different bits and pieces. Once they upload that into these AI tools, within seconds, that information, so say for example, they've said, I don't know, this is a particular thing. Can you give me your opinions about this, this, and this? Once they've done that, within seconds, that information leaves your company's controlled environment. It's processed on servers that you don't control. As it says here, it's stored in locations you can't see and shared in ways that you didn't approve. So as soon as they've done that, it's vanished outside of your control. Okay, so clearly you then don't understand how that's necessarily going to be used. You don't know what's going to, basically that data that your colleague has fed into that is going to be going off, presumably to train a wider model. There's lots of different factors here that are in place, and we'll go over some of the risks in a moment. But this is just a typical scenario. Obviously, not every employee is going to be using AI behind your back, but at the same time, it's important to notice that this is something that does happen, and it happens a lot. So the risks of this, there are sensitive information exposure. As you can see, number one, that's clearly confidential data being exposed to unknown parties or even made public. So like I said, if this is going off to feed the wider model, it's been put in there. Potentially, once it's in there, a competitor might be able to search up, oh, I wonder what's happening with this. And if it's been fed into that wider model, there's a chance that their AI tool will be able to extract that. So that's the first thing. Secondly, it's about regulatory compliance concerns. So unapproved data transfers, clearly that can violate industry regulations. It can lead to penalties. That's a big one. There's the loss of visibility over company data. So you lose sight of where your data goes, how it's used, and who can access it. That is key. It's important for us to understand what we're doing, what all of our employees are doing with company data. And if we lose sight of that, then we kind of, again, we lose the bigger picture as to what's really going on within our companies. 4, and this is a massive one, intellectual property leakage. So yeah, again, proprietary ideas, strategies, and content could be used to train AI models. These are all things that, again, if you're not registering your intellectual property, this is just stuff that you want to keep it internal. It may not necessarily be something you're wanting to push external yet. If people are putting things up and saying, okay, well, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? And they're kind of half-baked ideas that aren't registered, that aren't, maybe you've not registered the designs yet, whatever, that could potentially also be a risk there. That's going to be leaked. And finally, of course, is unapproved third-party processing of data. So once it's out, once it's been submitted into that AI tool, the data is going to be processed with vendors that you don't know, with terms that you didn't accept. These are all kind of really important risks. Every single one of these is very not just valid, but it's important. So it's important that we're aware of them as to what happens if we don't allow this kind of managed environment. And the scale is massive. So Microsoft, it currently catalogs just over 1,000 generative AI applications. There are new ones that are always there, as it says, and that they're always, some of them are evolving, other ones are growing, others are are being adopted, being created as we speak. Lots of the time when people think about shadow AI, they think it's just ChatGPT. It's not. It also includes the common ones that I mentioned, so Claude, Gemini, Perplexity, but also it's other things as well that we don't necessarily think of when we think about AI. We usually think of AI as a tool that we put prompts into, right? But it could be AI meeting assistants, it could be transcription platforms, coding platforms, writing tools, things that are embedded within other applications. So we may use an application that has AI within that. So it's important to kind of understand that all these different bits and pieces that these different applications are using, this is all what we would refer to as shadow AI. These are all things that we don't have control over once it's been put into that particular that application. So far we've been talking about shadow AI, and I've been talking mainly about, people are doing this, and therefore, potentially leaks are going to be happening, all this kind of stuff. So when I bring that up, people often then say, okay, well, employers must be the problem, right? Because, if we just kind of say to them, you can't use any AI tools, or if we say, right, okay, that you have to stop this, that might be a workaround. The problem is that it's not employees that are the issue here. AI is something that people are going to be using, not necessarily, you might not necessarily want to use it yourself. That doesn't mean that your colleagues aren't going to be using it. The real issue is unmanaged AI, and that goes within, into AI strategy territory. So we can talk about the difference there. So people ask us, like, how do we stop people using AI? But it's important to remember that the reason why people are using AI, I mentioned it already, it's to do a whole different, a variety of things. Different people have different reasons. People who are who may have disabilities, they may be using it because they need to have it to I don't know, make it easier, a certain part of their job that they find particularly tricky because they may have a disability in that area, whether it's dyslexia, for example, or whatever. Maybe it's able to help pull things out from there. It could be because they want to increase their productivity, they want to get more stuff done, they might want to reduce the repetitive work they're having to do, and they're feeling a little bit robotic in their role, all this kind of stuff. These are all different reasons, and there's other ones on the screen as well that you can see, but these are all different reasons why people use AI. We shouldn't be asking this question as business leaders. We shouldn't be saying kind of, how do we stop people using this tool that's widely available, right? We should instead be thinking, how do we help these people, our colleagues, use the AI tools that they're already going to be using safely, right? Because if we try and ban it, it really does drive adoption underground. You will lose visibility. People will not be honest with you as to what they're actually using. They might start using personal tools because maybe their workplace stuff is monitored, so they will try other ways of being able to do it. It's much better to to actually consider the approach of, okay, we understand that we live in in the modern age. How is it that we're going to be able to make sure that when they are using these tools that they have available to them, that everyone has available to them, how can we get them to use those safely? And what we see in the real world, and this is again when we do start asking these questions, and we'll go into this as part of the strategy for managed AI in a moment. What we see in the real world is that most organizations, that when they do ask these questions, they discover employees are already using AI. Not only that, but multiple AI platforms are being used. Personal accounts are very common. So if people can't use their work accounts, they're going to be using personal accounts for that. Often there's no formal guidance within their organizations as well. And also no formal AI solution has been provided. That's just the case with most organizations at the moment. So the result when this happens is that employees find, or they create their own solutions by adopting a variety of different AI tools. So it's important to know that if you don't provide an AI strategy as a business, your employees will create one. It may not be the best strategy, but it will be something that they will create themselves. Okay, so how can we identify shadow AI within our organization? And this goes back to what I was saying previously, right? What we want to do is we want to conduct a really thorough but blame-free investigation. Otherwise, people will clam up. They will not tell you about what they're doing. So the idea is it's almost like an amnesty. That's basically what we need to do in order to actually get people to open up and just tell us what they're doing, because we can't. It's frustrating when we know, okay, this business data might have potentially been leaked into the into the wider model of whatever AI tool they're using. But at the same time, what's even more frustrating than that is to then not have the visibility of what's going to happen from now on, right? So we want to make sure that we're actually getting on top of that, and that's really important. So, and this goes to what I was just saying, before we create policy, before we look at that, that's obviously the governance side of things. But before we even look at that, we need to have visibility of what it is that that people are using. So again, and I can't insist this enough, it needs to be a blame-free internal investigation. You need to work out what people are already using, how many employees are using them, what data is being uploaded. That might be to this point, if personal accounts are being used or not, and which departments are adopting AI the fastest. These are all things that we can gain just by asking simple questions. But again, it needs to come from that position of interest, not from blame. As soon as people feel like they're being blamed for the stuff that they've done to help with their role, they will clam up. So it's more encouraged to go down the inquisitive but non-judgmental perspective with this. We need to really encourage transparency, before we even do anything else. So how do we move from shadow AI to managed AI? So this is where we start actually getting into real practical things now that you can help change, really, hopefully, and evolve your organization. And the way we do that is by applying a governed AI adoption strategy, right? So this is how we move from shadow AI to managed AI, right? Shadow AI, things that we don't know, we can't control, it's going out there. Managed AI are things that we can see, we understand what's going on, and is considerably more secure. So this part here, we're going to go over some steps a bit later on. We're going to kind of really break this down in the last slide, just as a kind of a bit of a summary. But this really is kind of the crux of the entire presentation, right? And like I said, we will break this down in a bit, but really this is what it goes to, right? We want to move from shadow AI, which is what most organizations have at the moment, to managed AI. And in order for us to do that, we need to follow these 4 stages, okay? We need to discover, so this is all we were just talking about. So first we need to understand what tools are already in use. That's the first stage. Then we move to governance, right? And this is about creating clear AI policies, acceptable use guidelines, just things that we have, a framework essentially that we can work within. Thirdly, we can then enable the tools. So we provide the approved tools for our colleagues. Yeah. So this is, through their corporate accounts, things that they can sign into, that they're allowed to use, that they feel permitted and free to use. Okay. That's a key part of this, because if you put all this governance in place and then you're not enabling them with the tools, they will then find these other tools. All right. So if you enable them for tools that that are within your framework, then that is ideal, right? And then finally, education. So this is about training users on safe, responsible AI usage. Maybe prompt engineering. That's one that I do. A presentation of myself and training in. But that goes way beyond that as well. It also goes into what type of stuff that we use AI for. Whether we're going to be using AI for everything, hopefully not, or whether we're going to be using it for very specific things within our role, right? But this is really the I would say the core message of this, and this really shows us a mature AI strategy, okay? And that covers these four stages. If we don't do that, then we fall into what is called AI adoption traps, right? So and this is a very AI image, like the other one that I shared earlier about the Willy Wonka one. That was a bit of a callback to that Wonkaland, I think it was called, that some of you may remember. And this one, I wanted to create like a very AI looking image as well. But this really summarizes what I mean. Most businesses, they currently fall into one of 2 extremes. On the left hand side, you can see that's no control, right? So that's if people say, look, use whatever AI tool you like. So they might have a level of governance or whatever, but then when it comes to the actual tool, they're like, look, use whatever one you want, as long as you're not doing it for this, this, or this. The issue with that is that risks data exposure, There are compliance concerns there. There's a lot of different factors there, right? It's dangerous because potentially secure company data could even accidentally be leaked to to a wider model of one of these AI tools. So that's the left path. The right path, as you can see, this is the no adoption, and this is the organizations that say, look, we banned AI. Again, the risks of that is that if you completely ban AI, not only do you reduce your competitiveness, because clearly there are going to be lots of people, lots of organizations out there who are using AI, not just necessarily for generative AI stuff, so not necessarily for like images like this, but for more workplace specific stuff is what I'm talking about. So you'll reduce your competitiveness there. You'll lose your productivity because other people will absolutely be using AI, whether it's within Excel or Word or what have you. And also, importantly, your employees will find workarounds. If you do ban AI as an organization, it's important to know that that's fine. That's definitely a stance to take. But it's also important to know that all of your colleagues, they may not have the same views, the same ethics as you do. And if they don't, they will find workarounds to be able to make their job a bit more palatable, right? So it's important to mention that as well. The sweet spot, as we talked about, it's managed AI enablement. So we talked about that in the previous slide. So really, that's about providing tools, creating policy, giving training, and really that oversight to make sure that it's being used not just effectively, but in a secure way. And this is when we get on to Copilot, right? So I talk about Copilot a lot. I do various different training things in Copilot for people, prompt engineering and overviews and other bits and pieces. Copilot can help us to embrace AI safely because it brings AI, all the different capabilities and the innovation of AI inside and within the security boundary of your business. Okay, and this is why we talk about this so much, because some of the issues when it comes to AI is that, like I said, when you put things into an AI model, into an AI prompt, it will then go off to feed the wider model. The great thing about Copilot is that it's as secure as your Outlook or your Word account or your Excel. When you're saving things within your Microsoft 365 environment, there's that trust there that you're saving it. It's secure, everything's good. And it's the same kind of thing with Copilot because it already sits within your 365 environment. When you add things to prompts within Copilot, when you ask it questions, when you do all these various different things, that are going to be business secure, as long as you're using it on a work device, so a pro device that you're using as part of your job, then that's going to be secure. It's going to be paid for within your 365 subscription. It's something which is, regardless of whether you're using Copilot Chat or Copilot Premium, which is the one that you have to pay extra for, as long as you're using one of those two on a work device, it stays within your environment. So it doesn't go off to feed the wider model like these other tools are. And that, of course, is what we refer to as shadow AI. So the benefits you can see there on the left-hand side, it really basically, all the issues when we look at shadow AI, when we talk about Copilot, it solves all of those issues, which is why we're such big ambassadors for it, because it means that you can use your Microsoft Identity Control. So all the things that you can currently gain access to on SharePoint, those are the things that your Copilot can gain access to. But all the things that your colleagues can't gain access to, secure information, if it's been locked down, they wouldn't be able to gain access to that within their Copilot, but they would be able to do whatever, to gain access to whatever they can already see. And it goes beyond that. Like I said, respects your permissions. I just covered that. Keeps your data within a governed environment. Supports auditing, compliance processes, and reduces reliance on personal AI accounts. So again, if you're using that, it means you're not having to constantly get out your phone or use your own personal device, or even using something on a personal account. You can literally just do it within your workplace environment. And really, the goal is not to stop innovation, but to bring that innovation inside your governance framework. That's really the key, and that's the reason why we endorse Copilot, because we don't want to stop people from using AI tools, but we want to make sure that if they are using those tools, that it's secure, that you can be happy and secure in the knowledge that everything that they're using Copilot for and these AI tools for, it's going to stay secure within that environment. It's not going to be leaked. And finally, we're coming to the 5 steps. So I hinted about this earlier, and this goes back to that slide about the mature AI strategy and the kind of the roadmap moving forward. So these are 5 steps that we can start next week. So, and this links together with this piece. So as you can see, the first thing is about discovery. That was the first part of that mature strategy. So the first thing we need to do is identify which IA tools are being used. You could literally start that. You could start that this week even. Once you've done that, you then need to go on to the governance side of things. So this would be about creating an AI acceptable use policy. That's always recommended to do first. And secondly, about defining what data should never be shared. So if there are things that you think that should never, ever be shared, regardless. So for example, if you are using a third-party tool, if you're not using Copilot, obviously we endorse Copilot, but at the same time, you might be using a premium version of a different AI tool. So if you are using that, then you just have to be aware of the fact that some of these things may be going outside. You know, there are these chances of leaking. So you just have to make sure that you're defining what data should never be shared. So whether that's customer records, HR data, you know, intellectual property, whatever it is, you just need to make sure that there is a framework around that. And then that framework is shared internally as well to make sure that everyone's aware of it. Then we need to focus on enabling it. So you provide an AI platform for people. So of course we would recommend Copilot, but that could be Claude, that could be other AI tools. But the idea is once you've done that, you've enabled it, and then that is then the thing that your colleagues are then almost given permission to use. Then it becomes okay, look, we've enabled you with this AI tool. This is the one that you can use. And it's a lot simpler then, because people will feel less inclined to use these external tools if you have provided that for them and enabled it for their use. And then finally, it's about education. So it's about training your staff, looking at really what you can use AI for. Maybe the best practice of prompting. We talked about prompt engineering and how can you get the results that you want quicker from your AI prompts. And maybe there are some business use cases as well. There are certain times when you've noticed actually this particular thing worked really well, and how could other people replicate that using a tool. Okay, so these are 5 steps we could start next week. But yeah, I would suggest starting at the discovery stage and then working your way down to the bottom. All right, and that's me done. That's my talk about Shadow AI. Thank you for joining us. I think we've got maybe another minute or 2 for questions. I don't know, Hayley, if anyone's asked us anything, but happy to answer if so.
No, nothing's come in, Tim. I think you've explained it all perfectly.
Ah, perfect. Okay, brilliant. In which case then, I will stop sharing my screen and just appear to say thanks so much for joining us, everybody. And yeah, look forward to speaking with you soon.